Hey English learners, I had the idea today of walking around while doing today's video. I'm here at a park and I'm going to do a video where I speak at normal speed. Hopefully you guys like this format. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Obviously there might be some ambient sounds. There's landscapers here mowing the lawn. There's kids playing and stuff like that. So hopefully you can hear me well. Today I want to talk about reasons why you probably didn't learn English very well when you took classes in school, when you took English classes in high school, middle school, elementary school, whatever it may be. This is a strange format for me, so excuse me if I'm just like looking around. I'm trying to like be natural here. I think people are watching me, so this is a little bit new for me, so bear with me here. But today we're going to talk about why you might not have learned English very well in school. I'm also going to release a podcast episode about this. It's probably going to come out in a couple months or so. I'm way more ahead on podcast episodes than I am on YouTube videos. But I wanted to talk about this today because it's a topic that is pretty relevant to probably most of you, maybe almost all of you. I'm sure most of you learned English in school. Maybe you took 4 years of English classes in high school, or maybe you took even more than that if you started English classes in middle school, elementary school, whatever it may be. But I hear this story again and again and again every time I talk to students about their experience learning English in school, especially in public schools. I'm not really talking here about private schools. There's a lot of good private schools, but in public schools, what tends to happen is that people take years and years of English classes and they never learn English. So why is that? Let's talk about some of the issues. These are just my opinions, obviously. Other people might disagree with me. They might think that there are other issues, or they might not see it the way I see it. But these are the things that I see that might contribute to the reasons why people don't learn English in school. I don't have my notes with me. Usually I have like my notes on my computer to kind of keep me organized. So I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. Like I'm just trying to speak naturally, spontaneously, and just try to remember the ideas that I have in mind. So I think the main idea, not the main idea, but the main point, the main problem that I would say of why English classes aren't that useful in school. They're useful, but not as useful as we'd like them to be, is because they don't teach you how to learn English, right? It would be great if English classes in high school, English teachers taught students how to actually learn a language, how to actually go about learning English, because the majority of our learning comes outside of the classroom, right? The classroom is not where we're getting like most of our practice, most of our listening practice, perhaps not even most of our speaking practice, depending on your situation. So because of that, I'm going to turn around here. I'm going to like do laps at this park. Sorry, this is like completely natural video, not edited or anything like that. So bear with me. But like I said, one of the big problems with English classes in high school, middle school, or whatever, is that students kind of just show up hoping to learn English. They don't actually know, they don't actually learn how to learn a language. You know, whatever subject it may be, it's great to learn how to learn something, right? And when you learn how to learn, then you can do it on your own, right? You don't need someone to guide you through every step of the way or whatever. But that's not the case in high school English classes in most countries, right? People don't learn how to actually learn English. They just show up and hopefully, the knowledge just like gets transferred to their head from the teacher or whatever. And that's not how it works in most cases, right? So that's a big issue, is that students aren't taught how to learn. Another issue, I would say, is that the content that is used is not always the best. And so I always talk about this idea of having comprehensible input. That's the term that's used nowadays to describe this. Input referring to things that you listen to or that you read, and having this content and have it be comprehensible, meaning you understand it. So the idea is to use content that you can understand but is still challenging for you. So it's still like a little above your level, so that you're learning new words, you're learning new phrases, you're learning new vocabulary, your brain is having to kind of fill in the gaps of things that you don't understand when you read or you listen to whatever the content is. So that's basically what you're doing right now, right? You're watching this video, maybe you listen to my podcast, And what it is it's made specifically for a specific level. This is a more advanced video because I'm speaking at normal speed, but you got the subtitles, right? And so that's a little bit more comprehensible. You're able to like read the subtitles while you're listening, and so that makes it more understandable. But for example, if you watch my lower level videos, or if you listen to my podcast, you're listening to content that's made for a specific level that's lower than just native level. So what that's good for is that you actually use content that you can understand, and you are still being challenged, you're still learning new words, you're still learning new phrases, but it's understandable. It's not something that's just way above your level, or like just super boring and not authentic, and just like some textbook, like whatever text they put in there that's not very interesting, right? So unfortunately in schools, a lot of what you consume in your English class is going to be like really boring, like textbook style stories that don't really interest anyone, or they're like little videos that you might watch that really aren't that interesting. I remember watching these in Spanish in my high school Spanish classes, my middle school Spanish classes. Actually, no, I didn't have Spanish in middle school. That was just high school. But in my high school Spanish classes, I remember watching like videos that weren't that interesting or whatever. So, the type of content that we use is extremely important, because if you use content that's interesting for you, that's engaging for you, that you can understand, but is still challenging for you, that's going to be like the optimal type of content that you want to use. Man, it's kind of hard to like walk this fast and talk. You can hear that I'm like breathing a little bit harder. Hopefully you don't mind. But yeah, using content like that is going to be much, much more valuable for you than using just the generic, boring content that might be too easy for you, might be too hard for you, whatever it may be. That content tends to be just less useful overall, right? So the type of content used in schools is often not the best, right? What else? What are the problems? Let me think. I've got a few other ones that I had in mind, but I don't have my notes in front of me, so I kind of have to scour my brain to try to remember what they were. Yes, another issue is the speaking practice is not very helpful, right? Obviously, speaking is like the hardest part of learning a language for most people, right? And so you would hope that in these classes you would have some like good, well-designed, effective speaking practice, but that's usually not the case. At least in my experience, it was typical to do like role playing, and this role playing was not very interesting. It's like, all right, let's pretend that you're the cashier, I'm the person shopping here at the supermarket, let's interact, right? Obviously, there is something useful about that. Obviously, you can learn useful phrases, useful words for that specific situation. Maybe I'll slow down here so I'm not walking so fast so I can talk more easily. Yeah, obviously you're learning things that are good for that situation, but let's be honest, that's not the most interesting type of speaking practice. And those types of things, like the words that you learn through that exercise or whatever, they're not going to stay in your head as like easily as something that's much more relevant to you. Like, for example, if you were to do speaking practice about something that's actually really important to you, it's really engaging for you, it's really relevant to your life, you're probably going to learn and remember those new words more easily. I notice this a lot. For example, when I do speaking practice, when I'm learning other languages, what happens is I tend to focus a lot of my early efforts on speaking about things that are really important to me, that are really relevant to my life. For example, I might speak a lot about language learning, or I might speak a lot about online business, content creation, things that I do that I talk about on a regular basis, even in English, and that are interesting for me, that are relevant for me. And so what tends to happen is I learn a lot of new stuff, words, phrases, grammar even, different structures, from talking about those things, because those things stay in my head. I repeat them a lot because these are things that I talk about a lot. I have a lot to say about them. So it kind of helps out with the repetition where I'm speaking more about them. These phrases are sticking in my mind more. I don't know if you guys want to kind of see the view because you're kind of under me here, but got a nice big old park here, pretty close to my house. So this is pretty nice. There's some kids over on the playground, so I'm trying to stay away from there. But yeah, in terms of speaking practice, the speaking practice in these schools, in these classes, is just not that relevant, not that useful. And because of that, it's not very memorable. The stuff that you're learning doesn't stay with you as easily, right? So that's a big issue. So speaking practice is, that's something that's lacking. Like there is speaking practice, but it's not very good. It's not very effective, and it just doesn't help you learn as much, right? And then one other thing that I can think of is just kind of the lack of freedom when it comes to these classes, because as you probably know, when it comes to learning a language, it's really useful to be able to kind of have flexibility and use content that's good for you that perhaps might not be interesting for someone else, but you like it, or, whatever it might be. Having this freedom to customize like your consumption of English so that it fits you, so that it's interesting for you. This is something that's obviously lacking in schools, right? So obviously everyone's kind of forced to read the same thing, listen to the same thing, do the same thing, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I get it, because we want structure, but unfortunately that means that a lot of people are just kind of tuned out. They're not really, engaged with what they're interacting with in the class in terms of the content. And it probably means that they're not retaining as much information. It's just not good. Like, imagine if someone forced you to use just like really boring content for English, right? You probably wouldn't be that excited to learn English, right? I hope that this type of video is more interesting for you than just some random boring textbook or whatever it may be, right? So I'm not saying that we need to just like have no rules in the English class. All I'm saying is there should be a little more flexibility. Perhaps students can use, different types of content, not always have to use the same exact thing if it's interesting for one person, but not for another person, right? And speaking of textbooks, that's one other issue. I think there's just an over-reliance on textbooks in English classes. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with textbooks. Textbooks are great. They're great like resources. You can reference them if you want to learn things about grammar, you want to learn rules, you want to practice with things, maybe learn vocabulary. Sometimes there is they do have like good, interesting stories that could be good, comprehensible input. Not always, but sometimes they have that as well. So textbooks are great. However, these classes tend to be like dependent on these textbooks as like the primary source of information for or primary source of interaction with the language, for the students. And I don't think it should be like that. Textbooks should be supplementary, right? So obviously it's good to reference a textbook to learn different things, practice with different rules if that's what you're trying to do. But the main foundation of your learning, of course, is not going to come from the textbook. It's not like, all right, I'm going to learn all the rules in the textbook and then I can use all these rules naturally in my own speech. It just doesn't work that way, right? You guys probably know what I'm talking about, right? So instead of that, why not make, comprehensible input the foundation of the learning experience, even within the context of a classroom? Have some relevant type of speaking practice that's actually useful and engaging, and then also use the textbook as like a supplementary thing to help with like certain grammar points and help kind of give just a little bit of guided structure through the fundamentals of the language or whatever, right? So I think that would be a better approach than like using the textbook as the main learning resource, right? Because I don't think anyone really likes that much, and it just deprives people of the time like during class to do other things that are more important, right? Like the listening comprehension and the relevant speaking practice, all of that. One other issue, and this one is kind of hard to really remedy, but the other issue is that obviously most teachers in public schools, if they're teaching an English class in some other country, they're not a native speaker, right? And so because of that, they're obviously not going to pronounce words correctly all the time. They're obviously going to say things that are wrong. And, that's just kind of how it goes. That's not like a knock on these English teachers. I'm not trying to insult these English teachers. Obviously, they're doing the best they can, right? But obviously there is the issue of people in these classes that just repeat what they hear the teacher say. And obviously if the teacher pronounces something wrong, the students are going to say it that wrong way, right? They're looking at the teacher as the authority, so they're going to say it wrong like the teacher does. But again, that's a little bit harder to remedy because you can't have a native teacher in all these classes. But what I would say is if you are like a teacher, an English teacher in one of these classes, it's really important to acknowledge this, right? We don't want to get so prideful. Like if I were teaching Spanish, let's say in the US, I would never want to be so prideful to say like, oh no, like I'm, the way that I'm saying it is exactly the way that someone from Mexico would say it. Because it's not, right? Even though I don't have a terrible accent when I speak Spanish, I do not say things the same way that a Mexican does, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a second language learner, right? I learned it as an adult, obviously. So when it comes to like, someone teaching English in another country and they're not a native speaker, they should have that same attitude of not thinking, well, I'm the teacher, so everything I say is right and correct. That's just not the case, right? We need to acknowledge that. And so if you can acknowledge that, and if you can also like communicate that to the students and perhaps use other content like that would be from native speakers, like videos and audios and things like that, that would serve as like instructional material or just listening practice beyond just your own speaking, obviously that would be good as well. Like if I were teaching Spanish in the US in a class, I wouldn't want their listening practice to be like just from me. Like it shouldn't be 100% me speaking, right? Because obviously I'm not a native speaker. They're going to be missing a lot if I'm the one that's like 100% of their listening content, right? Whereas in English, obviously I have no problem doing that because I'm a native speaker. Okay. So I think the same thing goes for someone teaching English in another country. It'd be good for them to just, be humble, obviously know that they're not going to say everything correctly, and then also kind of utilize other content to supplement, what they're saying to the students, like native content, and, help students find native content that's good for them, that will serve as good listening practice for them. My thoughts are really scattered right now. It's kind of nice to do videos like this. It's just a little bit outside my comfort zone. But if you guys like this, I'll try to do this a little bit more often. But there's a few other people walking around. I'm trying to avoid them. I'm trying to go to places where I can just walk freely and not need to lower my voice, because it makes me a little bit embarrassed to like talk really loud here at the park, filming myself or whatever. But those are some of the issues that I think. And then, the remedies would just be to kind of, mitigate those issues, make those issues less of a problem, right? Don't rely too much on textbooks, use comprehensible input, teach students how to learn English. That's probably the biggest thing, the biggest solution or biggest help to the classroom would be to actually teach students how to learn on their own, right? If you can teach a student how they can actually utilize their time at home that they have to learn English, utilize it the right way, that's golden, right? That would be a really, really good thing for someone to learn how to learn English on their own, because the majority of our learning doesn't come from that high school English class. It comes from all the stuff that we're listening to, that we're reading, that we're watching on our own. And of course, the speaking practice that we do, whether it be, with other people in our daily lives, other people online or whoever it is, right? Those are the things that really, it's the foundation of our learning, right? So I think that even though it's not my expertise, like the classroom setting, I'm more of a one-on-one type teacher. I think that these are still valid ideas, even though I'm not an expert. I think that I'm speaking just kind of from experience, from what I've heard from students that have talked to me like about issues with their English class experience or whatever. So I don't know what you guys think. Maybe you can leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about that. What are some of the struggles that you came across learning English in a high school classroom setting or whatever? And let me know what you think about this type of video. Obviously, I'm breathing a little bit more heavily. I think I just need to walk more slowly, and that would be better. So I was like walking really fast before. So if I walk more slowly, maybe it'll be a little bit more natural. But this is fun for me, so hopefully you guys like this. Remember that if you want more advanced content, if you want all of my advanced episodes, so I've already recorded like 100 of them or something like that, you can get them all just by becoming a Listening Time family member, and you'll still get 2 new ones every single month. after that. So it's a really, really great deal. The link down below, if you go down and click on that, you can sign up to become a Listening Time family member and you'll get those. Also check out my US Conversations podcast. In that podcast, I talk to different English teachers from all over the country. It's a lot of fun. It's great practice for your listening. These are authentic conversations. I give you the transcript for it so you can follow along more easily. If you want that, that link is also down below. All right, thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you in the next video.